Apologies, I was muted. Start over. Hi, everyone, and welcome to OfferZen's webinar, Strategies to Drive Developer Retention When Hiring and Building Teams. I'm Nick, Engineering Manager at OfferZen, and I'll be hosting today's webinar. Before we dive into the event, we have some rules of engagement for today. First of all, you can see us, but unfortunately we can't see you. If you drop off the video, you can join back at any time with the same link you received when you register for today's event. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can post them in the questions tab. That's on the right-hand side there. Today's webinar is recorded and will be shared with all of you. And finally, you can use the chat tab to add some comments throughout the session today. I see a bunch of you already doing that. And while we wait for a few more people to join, tell us your name, company, and where you're from. Okay, that worked well, thank you. Welcome again to everyone that's just joined. I'm Nick, and I'll be hosting tonight's event. A few words about OfferZen. OfferZen is a developer talent marketplace that was founded in Cape Town, South Africa in 2016. Our marketplace helps over 2,000 companies in Africa and Europe hire curated, job-seeking software developers. Companies on OfferZen can directly reach out to skilled developers with upfront information about their preferred tech stack, salary, previous roles, and make their hires in 20 days on average. If you're hiring or would like to browse the developers currently live on OfferZen, simply hit the I'd like to know more on the poll on your screen, and we'll send you a link to check out OfferZen yourself. We also have a strong focus on community, running events like this or creating content on our blog. We have listened to the community and are cutting through the noise to help bring you more Zen. Our webinar series focuses on practical takeaways, tips from industry leaders, and the latest insights on software developer hiring. And today is no different. In just a few moments, I'll be joined by Tabang Tsboho and Luke Kannemeyer to discuss strategies to drive developer retention when hiring and building teams. So let's bring our speakers onto stage. Welcome to Tabang and Luke. Please give us a quick intro to Tabang. Let's start with you, followed by Luke.
Hi there. I'm guessing you can hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Amazing, amazing. Good, is it afternoon now, everyone? I'm Tabang. I am an engineering team lead at Bash. Bash is an omni-channel retailer, the biggest fashion retailer in South Africa. We haven't checked, but might also be on the continent. And I lead the mobile team at Bash. This is the app you'd see as a customer when you go to any of your app stores. And yeah, can't wait to get to chatting about this very timely topic today.
Cool. I'll jump in here. Sorry if there's any background noise. I just realized there's construction happening outside. But yeah, so I'm Luke Cunningham. Came from more of a sort of like medical biosciences background, then jumped into EdTech and then joined Sweep South about 6 months in. And yeah, it was founded on trying to disrupt a space that had been rather like stagnant for a while, where we'd entered a new dispensation, but it was still age-old practices here that we felt limited dignity within the sector, but also didn't allow those who truly were stars to be able to shine, who were good at what they did. And so we take home service providers, primarily domestic workers, gardeners, and we connect them to clients with ensuring that both sides of that marketplace adhere to a set of standards that ensures great quality of service, but also protection of pay and working conditions.
Cool. Thanks. Before we get started today, I have an icebreaker question for you. If you could describe your approach to leadership in one word, what would it be and why? Luke, we'll start with you.
I think trust. I think for me, there's just one of the things here that often, and I'm wearing a college shirt today, but that's because we're doing photos. But in like the startup space, if you're wanting to move quickly, going from a position of you have to earn trust as opposed to I'll give you trust and then we'll move from there, I think is like vitally important, because I'm more of the like move fast and fix things. So that's not the move fast and break things, is that we take time, you give people trust, understand the problem, and then, let's fix things quickly. And yeah, it just is that balance here that I think often is gone right, is people get that wrong. And we see that in the whole like return to office trend across the world. I think that managers struggle to trust their employees.
Yeah, I would have said the same thing. I would have said trust, but since you've already claimed that one, Luke, I will say service. I don't view myself as being in charge, but rather being responsible for the people I've been whose charge I've been placed under, right? Because I don't deliver value, right? I'm there to help the people who deliver value be able to do so in a timely, predictable, efficient manner. And so in that way, for me, I describe my leadership style as, service, just trying to be of service and putting the team at the forefront as much as possible.
Awesome. I think that's really great answers. Trust, service. The only one I could add in there was to say we should always be curious. I think that's a good thing to be. Okay, so for today, we'll be covering 3 topics, everyone. First one, how the state of the tech landscape is impacting tech leaders today, and what it means for retention. Second, how to start competing beyond salary and stability in your team, and how to leverage it when hiring. Third, how to rebuild trust in leadership to make developers join and build a culture of long-term retention. And then we'll be moving over to some questions from all of you. So for the first one, I'll add a bit of context. In our State of Developer Nation report, we've seen that salary growth for most devs have stagnated, and many companies are downgrading perks to stay profitable. So with that, how have you experienced the impact of the tech industry's downturn in South Africa? And maybe now we can start with the bun.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone on this call has felt this to some extent. Many engineering teams, are decreasing budgets or trying to keep them the same, and that has really played out in career advancement, especially really across the the all steps, right? From but most particularly, I've seen it mostly at the senior level, where now with budgets getting capped and responsibility typically increasing because of team sizes not growing, and so scope, you increase the danger of your more senior, your most productive engineers feeling this burden, but also struggling to feel recognized, which has called for getting very, very, very inventive in making sure that it's clear that the impact and the value of your most senior engineers is recognized, and it's visible to them too, so that as these things stagnate for the moment, it's not the hair, is it the hair or the grain that breaks the camel's back. Alongside the whole stack too, making sure your mid-levels are very clear that there's growth opportunities outside of just earning potential as these things freeze up, all the way down to your juniors. We've also, on a positive note, for engineers who are then looking around because they're not getting these things from their current teams, the pool of talented engineers is definitely increasing. We've not really, in South Africa, I believe, or at least from my experience, had the issue of hiring good engineers. We've always had a lot of them. It's just that typically they would not want to leave, whereas there's quite a larger pool now of pretty talented engineers who are on the market and searching, trying to speak to that issue of stagnant pay. Not sure how much you would have heard, Luke, with your drop-off.
Yeah, so sorry, man. Somehow my devices decided that their drivers wouldn't work for a bit. Yeah, so I think just to add, like briefly, it's been challenging, right? Both to developers, and I think that when you say maintain profit margins, Nick, is that like I think that there is this paradigm that the world exists on, and through VC capital and whatnot, and returns for shareholders, where some have done this to, extend profits, and others have done this, to remain prudent and promote sustainability of the organization, so that we are still can continue to maintain being able to offer jobs and be a healthy business. And because if you don't control that narrative with your team and you're not transparent with them, you'll let a sort of global narrative or some like lay of speech that's very like tone deaf from a larger company go viral, and then that attitude pervades your team. And yeah, no, it's been challenging. And this is, I think, where part of we've had to shift from a more trying to make sure we are getting missionaries, not mercenaries, but still very much believing that how do we drive value in other ways for devs? But I think there's also an opportunity in this through that competition within the market that, like wage stagnation is never a great thing, but there's still many, many great places. And in challenging environments, I've seen many really interesting companies emerge out of this, and especially like in the clean tech space. So, you're coming out of fintech and now you've set up your alerts that no, you want to re-enter that sort of business because that's where the money is at. But actually, there's a whole lot of other industries that are really growing. And so being strategic about your own career and seeing places that resonate for you and that will stick with you. But I'd definitely say that in the startup space, you have a lot of devs being like, yeah, okay, even if you offer to pay me more, I want to be in corporate, in banking, something that I know will last. And it's just seeing that, you can't get everyone from an employer's perspective. And exactly for you from like as a software dev, be picky, but yeah, keep your eyes open and eyes wide. Yeah.
I think, Luke, you touched on it very briefly there, so I'm keen to go a little deeper into that. You said, like, the question being, what do you think will be the effect on the attrition of devs? Because as you mentioned, people will obviously be a little bit nervous if things aren't going well. Like job security concerns, those kind of things. What do you think that effect will be?
Yes, I think I'll go first just because it was something there where I covered a bit of that. Where I think that to use Julius Malema's term, neocolonialism, we see ourselves competing. To be truthful though, is that software devs are now having the privilege that many other professionals have had, is you're competing in a global marketplace. And so what you're seeing is that companies come in here with much stronger currencies that you as a staffing company just can't even compete with that. And I think it really is a challenge here to you to retain people. But it's also a thing for me that like devs will leave. Like I want people to go on and grow themselves and do better. That if you try and hold on to people for forever, you're not bringing fresh energy into the team. You're also, you have complications there where one guy lands up way overpaid than another guy, and then you end up losing the other guys anyway because of that. And so definitely as a company, you're having to look at being far more transparent, looking at that environment, because you know that you're in a market with a much weaker currency. And I think that what you're seeing still is that those are going into like the more specific skill sets of where there's still a lot of scarcity, that those are the particularly painful positions to lose as a company. And that's, I think, like we're looking at your remuneration strategy, looking at your benefits. You can be smart about that, but realizing that don't try and keep people forever. Try and make sure that they provide the best value and you provide the best value to them during their time with you as an organization.
Tapan, what do you think?
100% agreed, Luke. The attrition is going to rise, as really it always does, especially with greener pastures abroad that now a lot of developers have access to while they're here. It's very attractive. So what that's really doing, which I believe is a good thing in the long term, especially in the startup ecosystem, is that it's making it harder to compete on salary alone. And as the money flows out, or as VC becomes scarce and businesses go to fundamentals, around the operations, they also need to go to fundamentals around how they articulate their vision and get buy-in. Because if your main strategy for retaining people is money alone, it's not going to work. You will suffer from attrition forever, right? And you'll lose all that context and all the upskilling that engineers have been doing. So you, as leaders, what's becoming more important is to articulate that vision and get people sold on the goals and create alignment with their own career and the growth they're seeking with those values, with those business goals, because those are the type of people who remain engaged and stay around and actually contribute to that mission in a very measurable way, as opposed to solely being there to collect a salary. You do get, like as Luke said earlier, right? You get these mercenaries who are great, but they are mercenaries. They can be bought. So you need missionaries, people who are truly bought into this mission, because then they'll stick around when things are getting hard. And to that too, transparency is super important. You need to treat developers as adults and not just tools that, not just the engine or tools that get the job done. These are people.
Yeah, very, very good insights. Sticking on the retention train, I see Amanda asked the question, around how long, what are our thoughts around how long people should be sticking around at a place. And it was kind of aligned with my thinking about the retention matter was for companies to be very deliberate and explicit about what it is that they can offer the people. If it is that you're a company that can grow people, those are the kind of people you want in your organization. Keep them there up until the point you can't offer that for them, and then let them go on. Support them on the exit. So that's at least my take on Amanda's question. I don't know, Thabang, what's your take? Do you have years in mind, or was it a little bit more nuanced?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of nuance. It depends on what you're maximizing for. If you are fresh into the industry and you have very little leverage and expertise, it's quite difficult to really figure out how long you stay. So for me, it's not really a matter of years or duration that decides this. For me, it's balancing the equation. Are you learning or are you earning? Right. Early in your career, it's best to learn because you can always turn that into earning more. So it's a matter of how getting that right. Like I've been here for 2 years. Am I still learning? No, should probably move on. But as you get later on in your career, and that earning has taken care of itself too. Again, too, you have to ask the question, right? Like, what am I optimizing for now? Am I looking for a career switch? Am I looking for that earning because I need more stability in my life because I have a child on the way or something to that extent? And that is how I think is best to decide on how long your tenure is at any one company.
Yeah, I think like just briefly, I think when you do any sort of financial planning and you're looking towards the future, unless you come from a trust fund or exceptional wealth, you are your greatest asset, your earning potential. And I think like Thabang is just right on the money there with you going to that job that's like 10K extra, but you're going to sit in that position or you're going to have a very limited focus. You're undermining long-term earnings. And so we've even had guys go leave us for Amazon, earning considerably higher salaries, and just come back as in like I had such a narrow scope when I was there. I hated not actually feeling like I could see the impact of what I was doing in the world. But to give a concrete answer, because I know people like these things, I would say that if I see a series of sub 2 year time spent at companies, so like especially less than a year, but this is more trend. Never stick around in a toxic environment, never stick around in an environment that you're not growing. And ultimately, if you can explain exactly why certain things happen that the way they are, but if you just see those series of short-term jobs, that's the first sign of a mercenary. And not a good look.
Great. If Amanda's happy with the answers. Okay, let's move along to our second theme for the day: how to start competing beyond salary and stability in your team and how to leverage it when hiring. So our data shows that the top reasons why devs leave their roles are to get better salaries or because of poor management, lack of career progression, or lack of growth opportunities. And the reason they'd stay are good work-life balance, growth opportunities again, and then the company culture. So which of these reasons for leaving do you think are particularly relevant to the current macro context and why? Luke?
Yeah, so I think Thabang, if you take this one first, I think, and I'll explore this and see if I have anything to add.
Cool. From my experience, a lot of the perks which are falling away, which were initially part of these packages being offered were always very frivolous things. Some of them were quite condescending, trying to get people into the office because you have a pool table and this and that, or free coffee. It's cool, but it's really speaking to one type of or one archetype for what for engineers or people who work in tech. I think the easy path is something that we're already seeing. It's remote work. People want flexibility, right? And they want to know that you trust them to get the job done, right? And that's one easy way. It's like offer people the flexibility to take charge of their time, because regardless of how much people are aligned with the mission or bought into the vision of the company, it's still a job. What comes first is their life, and if you can build a culture of making it clear to people that their life and those life responsibilities come first, their health comes first, and all these things, then it's much easier to swallow reduced increases for like a few quarters and such. Another thing is clarity around growth. Every company promises growth during that interviewing process, but what does that actually look like? It's very important to codify that what growth looks like, especially for your more junior and mid-level engineers who have so many different paths to go to. It's very important to codify that, not in such a strict way that it becomes a checklist to promotion, but in more so in a wide enough way so that someone can best quantify if they're growing once they're there, right? And that can be made clear by developing career progression ladders and different streams, which becomes even more important as with senior engineers. If the highest level an engineer can get is senior engineer in your company, how long are you going to have them there? And as their scope increases or shrinks or becomes more focused, what does that actually mean? Being able to clarify that makes it much easier to speak to progression and if you're not the one making the decision, to then go and put it forward within your leadership team to get this person progressed, because now you have the same language. It's much easier to articulate, and I think that's some of the ways more companies should be going about thinking about competing past just money.
Yeah, I think for me, just to add, is nothing for me was clearer here in terms of the whole return to office thing, and being in Lagos where traffic takes on a whole another dimension. To see that just lack of productivity that comes from that. And I think one thing that a lot of companies get wrong is they feel like somehow it's sticking to their values to have the same policy or a uniform thing that everyone gets treated the same. And that's not. Different jobs or different roles are suited to different, hours and work conditions, maybe even benefits. And I think it's really incumbent upon management to look at what do I do that helps me produce their best work. And then there's the other cardinal sin is over-promising and under-delivering from a management perspective. And I think that's where, as devs, holding your managers to account in what they tell you. And we're not always going to get it right in management. It's a give and a take. But if there's continual promises and no delivery on that, I think that I see as one of the biggest reasons that devs will depart. And all power to you. Like we, as management, we failed in those respects.
Yeah, definitely. I think also going through COVID, I think that was a big learning experience for everybody that was within a management position, especially if the setup was on premise. having everybody in the office and having to adjust to that. Now people realizing, maybe there is a world where everybody goes back hybrid or still stay remote, and how to be, the best leader you can be. That kind of touches on the next question, and that's like any advice on how to practically address devs' reasons to leave, and how to prevent them leaving from your team, with the backdrop of, maybe we can't offer the higher salaries. What can we do to keep them?
Yeah, so I think like for me, it's just, so I seen Nkoleleko asked there about how do we motivate our teams to get the missionary mindset. And I think for us, one of the cooler things, a part of why I'd actually left scientific research was just seeing my impact in the world. And one of the best things that we're able to offer in a startup, but also within like the marketplace that they were at, is that like what you do, a feature you release or you've worked on here, that's really getting someone more employment this weekend, or there's money going into homes and whatnot. And I think that's where, like, I remember an example a while back of where we had, I think when the first Black Panther came out, we, like as a team, went to the movies and with a whole lot of our workers and their families. And those are the sorts of things here where people get to really tangibly see the people they're impacting. But then there's nothing worse than putting something out into the world and not knowing how it's doing, or what impact it's had. And so that's where, cool, even if you worked on something like automated bank statements for workers, cool, you've reduced the contact ratio by X, like really putting that to the guys of the team that you've had tangible impact, whereas often it goes into the ether, and then the next thing comes from product and you're working on that. And I think that it also gives you that like dopamine hit that, like, some of my like favorite things where I'm needing motivation is just going to go do customer support tickets because I hate myself. And that being able to solve tickets is just such a tangible thing that many of us who are knowledge workers who work in different spaces don't get. And I think really they're trying to expose people that their work is meaningful, and what it means. And then also, like, I think the big thing there to be cautious of is, I'm thinking passion gap, but that's a Capetonian thing. It's the thing in the sort of gaming industry of where you have this phenomenon of crunch and lower salaries because guys, they know that they're there because they're so passionate about gaming, and so they push them further because of that. Like that's a real recipe for trouble as a company. Nor do I believe that that's like ethical leadership, that you take advantage of those sorts of things. And I think that's where you start to create this environment there, because people will go to Bryce, they'll go to different things, they'll have guys bitching about their bosses or what they've had to put up with, and if they haven't had to put up with those things, they can then reflect on why it is that I stay at this organization. But cool, if they're going to that Bry and the guy who has the new Apple Watch because all the devs got that, and that's the coolest shit that, like, they could, excuse my language, that they can get. Once again, that's not something that you as a company are going to be able to compete with. And that's just where that, like, honesty comes from on both sides. That it's a certain time here. There's certain things that we provide, there's certain things that we stand for. While we're on the same page, we can have a healthy environment. And continuing that when times are hard, a lot of the time, like as a company, you want to hide that. And that's then, some of the ways that we've been able to mitigate or have salary not just be the only benchmark.
Yeah. I mean, what else can I add there? You touched on, most of it really that I believe are the opportunities to get engineers to stay and address those their concerns. But I think on top of that, it's important to realize that different people need or value different things, right? So what we have as the average is that the concern is salary and career progression and growth opportunities, but you need to get into the details of the people in your team and understand for each person, what is it for them that actually is causing the friction? Because you can't unilaterally just say, oh, cool, it's specifically this, so then the whole team gets this. For some people, too, addressing growth for everyone looks quite different. Some engineers want to dive deeper at a technical level and really get entrenched in that. Some want to get more involved in the product conversations and see, these ideas all the way through their iterations and be able to provide support all the way to seeing whatever work they contribute to in the wild and seeing the actual impact. And some engineers, like me in my early days, even want to go and speak to these customers firsthand and have that informed and build empathy in that way. So there's no one size fits all. I believe what's truly important is to really get close and build the trust and build the bridge to be able to understand, so that you can incentivize people in the way that they feel they are incentivized to stay past the baseline. Because again, too, you still need to pay people fairly, right? Because like in the gaming industry, crunch and low salaries is a recipe for disaster and burnout, and that's just the worst type of leadership.
Okay.
Yeah, finally, just a more practical strategy that you can employ is ESOP. And I think a lot of people get, so that's employee share options. So if any founders, or I know a lot of devs will go on to be founders of their own businesses, is don't think that everyone values ESOP, as Taban said, everyone has their own priorities. And so don't give it away to everyone. But the guys who do value it. So there's a marketplace in India that I know that one of the earlier strategies was that, cool, you could choose to take the salary increase or have some of that increase rather be going to employee stock options. And that's where you are able to tune for that. So what do you value most? And the ESOP is you have a direct indicator and very tangible thing there that this is helping this person stick around. This person, they're getting what they want. They need the salary increase now, and I don't begrudge. We all have our needs, but that's just a very practical strategy. But just having it as a standard policy that everyone gets ESOP and it's this thing, I think that you can end up giving away a lot of the company and then land up where you do have some people later on and having far less of that pool to give away.
Okay, let's make it real for people. Any personal experiences on how you retain people using some of these strategies that you can maybe share, how you went about it?
In my experience, coming out of the more recent salary increase cycles, right, where it was about having the conversations. All too often, do managers just share, "Hey, here's your increase, bye," and move on. It needs to be clear. Here's the increase the company is giving. Here are the reasons from your point of contribution, performance, etc. But also, here's also why, from the company's perspective, this is the increase that they could make. Is it the max increase, you need to be clear. Like, was there potential to give someone a high increase? Was there potential to get them stock options as part of their increase? Because then that creates a greater sense of autonomy and trust, because it stops feeling like a by the way, an afterthought. It's clear that you value how these things are impacting people in your team. And I found that's helped a lot. And even where there were concerns or disappointments soon after these conversations, those concerns go away, or they are lessened, because people actually feel that they're in conversation and part of this, part of these decisions, as opposed to just being at the receiving end of them.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just like a specific example is looking at, like living some of those values and putting, this whole thing is not being able to put your money where your mouth is, but being able to truly value your people. So we've had things where we give an extra month of maternity, and that's really, and we give paternity benefits. That's been really valued by guys starting young families. And that, as a company, you can like capitalize, leave on the balance sheet that actually is money, but like just being practical. Yeah. That has specifically in our organization, that's worked with a few people.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing those. Time's catching up to us. I'm going to jump to the third theme for the day: how to rebuild trust in leadership to make developers join and build a culture of long-term retention. Our data shows that a lot of devs seem to have lost trust in leadership in the current market. So with that, how does leadership style influence developer retention, and what qualities in leaders would devs value in the current economic climate?
Yeah, Luke touched on something around earlier on, which is around over-promising and under-delivering. That's really eroded trust, especially where the under-delivering on salary or growth happens, and there's no sense that leaders are taking accountability for those outcomes. So on top of getting very clear and taking accountability around why trust is being broken. Excuse me, I just lost my trail of thought there. It's look, if you don't mind taking over for a second there.
No problem. Yeah, give you a sec there. I think we're all been in that place. Yeah, so I think like leadership style is probably, I mean, salary is a part of it, but even then, like I look at something like the healthcare sector in South Africa, and that our doctor salaries actually are generally quite competitive with the rest of the world. Yeah, we still see this attrition of doctors because of the way that they're treated. And I think it's just like leadership is one of the key things. And like devs are intelligent, the sort of thing that you're going to use to motivate them. I think what drives people up the wall, at least drives me up the wall, is the perpetual hype man. Blowing hot air, or everyone's like, yeah, it's the gears, and we're doing this and we're doing that. And it's like, yeah, no, but tangibly, what do we do? What does this mean to me? Or like, cool, are we talking in vaporware terms all the time? And I think that's where having a degree of being empathetic, but also someone who is there's accountability. I think that's very, very important. And I think a lot of leaders get this wrong in that they see themselves as being, understanding, or like one of your company values is respect And so that means not having difficult conversations. And I think that if you aren't able to have those, you'll often end up losing the guys who are performing or the guys who are delivering. But most times you'll end up losing both. And that really can create, being too nice can create actually a fairly toxic culture. And that's not to say you must take an approach of where there always have to be problems in the team, or you always need to be removing the bottom 10, 20%. That's also toxic as well. But people want to know when they're doing well, and they want to know when they're not. There's nothing worse than someone feeling like they're failing, but their leaders not being upfront with them as to like where they're going wrong or supporting them to get on the right path.
Yeah, definitely. I think Will Larson in one of his articles said that we as leaders have like a Hippocratic oath to do no harm. I think that's the important thing here. So for me, I would definitely try and lean a lot on autonomy, transparency, and recognition. I think if you can lean into those pretty hard, good things shall follow. With that, I'm really keen to get to our audience questions. So we were jumping straight to them. So Amanda, the first question I have here, what do you think are some of the most important organizational culture aspects that devs look out for when looking for positions? How do they gather this info, understanding an org in this regard before they join? Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give just to be ruthless during the interview process. Like, I think very few people often see themselves as being interviewed. I mean, I say this from a position of now being through a few long yards, and this is probably a bit more difficult as a junior. But you're interviewing the company as well. Getting to the end of that interview section, and do you have any questions? And you're like, no. Like, you should have questions there, but be even more precocious and see this as a conversation. Ask those back. If you go through a culture interview at the company, often where you'll meet other people, ask people difficult questions. Don't obviously, you want to be respectful. And then there's also just even looking at that process of how you join a company. How did they make me feel during that process? Was the communication good during that? Because that's probably an indication of the communication within the org. And I think that's very much also for hiring managers and whatnot, is that you are giving your devs, well, besides different employee review forums and whatnot, this is one of the first signals that someone's getting about your business and what it'll be like to work there. And I think that's also a thing where look on LinkedIn or to find someone who works there currently, see if someone works the business in your network, just have a coffee chat with them, see what it is actually like. And I think this is part of the difficulties that some of these online review forums may present, is that cultures change over time. Many companies scale and absolutely mess up. And so you read things about how wonderful they are. You come in and you're like, holy crap, this is not what I saw. But also that, and this is one of the things also to the earlier questions as a leader, is that you're going to screw up, and be honest when you screwed up, that culture can improve with time. And that's where talking to people currently working there, who have worked there recently, will give you very, very good signals. But more importantly, and I think this is just a lesson for life, that any interview, you have value, they want you to join, you get to ask questions.
Thanks, Luke. I think that's good from the candidate's perspective. The bang you want to take from the company's perspective. How do you get yourself out there in front of devs? What do you want to show them? What do they care about?
Yeah, I think It's similar to the answer that Luke just shared. It's important to exemplify and play out the culture that you say you are actually living out. There'll always be a gap between the culture the company states and aspires to and the actual reality. So getting ahead of this and telling these stories and engaging within the community is quite important as to offer that lens, because once you're in the spaces, you also start getting this feedback from developers of what is it that they actually are looking for. Then you can tailor your message way better as to reach the type of people you want to work for you, because the actual addressable talent pool isn't everyone. It's quite specific to your values. So if you can be very clear about your values and the lived culture, the right developers who align with that will see this, and then you need to be honest and listen, and so that these people can actually engage with you and be willing to take the leap.
Awesome, thank you. We'll move on to Chris's question. We have always expressed our missions in the form of wicked problems. For example, solving healthcare in South Africa. That is a wicked problem. But don't express our technical challenges that well. For example, latency and scale, that sort of thing. When you talk about mission, what types of missions do you find the most appealing? Wicked problems or technical challenges? So I guess the thing is the problem statement or the technical hurdle to get you there.
I think it's difficult to differentiate those two, right? And I think this is where I was talking about, like the manager with the hot air or with the vaporware, or doesn't talk in specifics, is that being honest about, like, your stack, and like, people will talk about where they think they will be or what technologies we're getting around to using, but aren't using yet. That's breaking trust immediately. But if you don't pair a technical aspect here, or getting someone excited about their work, and this is the thing, is that cool? So there's this wonderful mission now. Like, what does that mean to me? And I think this is even where we've looked at our strategies, that a lot of the bigger boys that take Python devs, that we often can't compete with salaries there, is, we can be that conduit of getting you there. Develop your Python skills further, so you can be more eligible for that job at Amazon or whomever. And I think that's like a bit of this honesty in each side. So you're solving healthcare through X, and this is like where you come in terms of the impact that we're needing you to solve for. One sentence. I've always questioned people who can take one single quote and feel inspired. I wish I was that type of person. Is there needs to be some meat.
Yeah, it's a very big question that Chris asked there, because there's no one answer, right? And it's something that you need to break down at different levels so that you can speak to people who get inspired by different things, right? Like you look at Bash per se, right? Being the biggest fashion or the best omni-channel fashion experience on the continent is very much geared towards investors and the exec types. But what does that look like at different levels? That actually looks like working at a very large scale on a technical level that most engineers don't get to work at. That will catch some engineers like, oh wow, I want to work at that scale. What do problems look like there? That's very interesting. And some engineers just be like, oh wow, within that scale, what is the actual stack that gets you there? This particular technology is, it's quite at the at the edge. I want to be part of, contributing to that and learning that. So it's really like the right mission statement, or the most motivating mission description is one that matches the target audience you're engaging with. It's a bit of an art.
Yeah. I always like to say growth is personal. Because it's personal, it's going to appeal to different people in different ways. Okay, we've got a few minutes left, so we'll go to the last question. It's asked, to touch on the point raised earlier, most who value long-term career benefits and work variety do so because they're stable enough to do so. If my immediate need is more money now, I'm most probably going to leave to solve my immediate need, and I'll come back after my need has been stabilized. And I'm also going to get a better increase if I leave and come back than waiting for the standard increase. It's unfortunate the nature of the beast. What are our thoughts on this?
Yeah, that's a deeply personal one for me. A lot of companies, it's not just that they over promise on growth and salaries. It's also that they don't have things in place to equitably and accurately, to an extent, reward this growth, right? Companies will say they want high growth teams and people who are really dialed into growing and performing at a high level. But this also means that people are growing very quickly, which means that you need to then, as a company, increase how often you recognize them. Practically, this means that you probably shouldn't be offering salary increases once a year, because that is antithetical to what you're then saying, because then your people are outgrowing their roles quite rapidly, or moving up in those roles. So more companies need to align their cycles of recognition and reward with the pace of growth that they expect from the engineers. And I think that to an extent will resolve that issue much better than people feeling that they have to leave and come back. So that's not an engineer failing if they feel they need to do that. That's a company failing. So something to really have an honest conversation about in your company.
Yeah, and I mean, just playing completely open cards, because I mean, we saw this in academia as well. But the struggle is real. I mean, it's often called like black tax in South Africa, but I know many guys have this when they have familial extended family responsibilities. If you're needing to optimize for income at the moment, those are discussions you can have with your hiring manager, with your leader. And if they're not empathetic, or if they can't offer other options, I'd question their leadership. Is that I completely understand that, like, you're needing this. This is your priority at the moment. Maybe your current company can get you there quicker. Or like one of the things that we decided to do is like, cool, can you give me the number of where you feel like you want to be at or should be at? And then your manager should be able to explain how to get you there. Cool, demonstrate X, Y, and Z, achieve this. So it's tangible for you. Okay, by August, X, Y, and Z is completed and demonstrated. Then let's have a discussion. And then obviously as the leader, delivering then on your promises. But if you can't, I mean, don't use airy-fairy language here and not recognize, because that's also where you're undermining someone. I think as a dev, leaving well is a good thing. Those recommendations on the network, the world is smaller than you think it is. And yeah, I just I think just trying to optimize for everyone is optimizing for no one. And I think that's just something as a leader, but also like you as a dev, it's just this company isn't giving me here what I want now. And then just very, very practical advice for you as a young dev is look at cost to company, gross, net, and then benefits and how does it apply to family. Because a lot of guys will get you if they know all you're looking at is one number, that there's all sorts of things hidden below that. Or where you get this wonderful USD salary, you convert that into rands and life looks grand, and then SARS comes knocking. And that's just some very more practical advice for you on the other end as a dev, if you're just going for small increments and jumps here.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. That's the end of it. So thanks for listening today. We've got some more great community events planned. So if you'd like to join one of these upcoming events, just to select so in the poll. We've got a lot of ground this evening, so I just want to say thank you to both Devang and Luke for coming today and talking to us. I hope our audience enjoyed our chat today. I know I did. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely day.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.